This video will analyze and explain all the rhythm guitar and bass parts that appear throughout the song. The tuning used in this video and on the record is standard E and 440 wavelength calibration. The main bass rhythm is going to be a 2-measure long riff pattern that is going to repeat itself throughout the intro and the verses of the song. There's actually 2 or 3 ways we could play this. Let's start out by placing the first finger on the D string at the 2nd fret. I'm choosing this position to take advantage of the open D string, which makes it a little easier to play. On the first measure, what we're going to do is pick this note down on 1 and let that ring out as a dotted quarter note for 3/8 of the measure. On the and beat right after 2, we're going to pick that note again upwards. We're going to let that sustain out as an 1/8 note. For the last half of that first measure, we're going to do a series of tied triplets. Normally, if you were playing straight triplets, the count would be 3 and a 4 and a. There'd be 6 evenly spaced notes there on the second half of the measure. What we're going to do is tie the time value of the 1st and 2nd, then the 3rd and 4th, and finally the 5th and 6th triplets together. So we're going to get 3 instead of 6. Okay, so on the first triplet, we're going to take the pinky and go to the 5th fret. We're going to pick that down on 3. On the beat, we're going to go back to the 2nd fret on that same string with the first finger and pick that up. To finish up the first measure, we're going to pick the open D string down on the and beat. With the 4-count lead in, here's what the first measure is going to sound like. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, and 3, and. Okay, now for the second measure. What we're going to do is place the middle finger on the C note, which is the A string at the 3rd fret. We'll pick this down on 1 and allow that to ring out as a half note. More or less, it's going to ring through the count of 2 without being picked again. On 3, we're going to place the first finger on the B note, which is the A string at the 2nd fret. We'll pick that down, let that ring out as a quarter note. On 4, we're going to take a quarter note rest. With the 4-count lead in, here's what the 2 measures of the riff pattern are going to sound like. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, and 3, and 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, and that keeps repeating itself. What I'm going to do now is play through that riff pattern 3 or 4 times. I'll give you a 4-count lead in, but I'm not going to count this aloud as I play it. 1, 2, 3, 4. The next thing that we need to cover is a 2-measure long bridge pattern that's going to lead into every chorus, and that same 2-measure long bridge pattern is going to be used to exit every chorus as well. We're going to start out by placing the first finger on the G note, which is the low E string at the 3rd fret. The first measure is going to be straight 1/8 notes, counted 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and picked down up, down up, down up, down up, just like this. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. The second measure, we're just going to go to the open A string and do the same thing. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. With the 4-count lead in, here's what the bridge pattern is going to sound like. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. During the choruses, the bass guitar is going to play a 4-measure long pattern that will be played twice in sequence. The first 2 measures are actually going to be the same as the main riff that we've already learned. The third measure will be a repeat of what we did in the first measure. All we really need to do here is learn the fourth measure. We're going to start out the same way we do the second measure, by going to the C note with the middle finger on the A string at the 3rd fret. We're going to pick that down on 1. Instead of playing a half note, we're going to do a series of tied triplets here for the first half of the measure. Okay, we're picking that note down on 1. On the beat, we're going to hammer on to the 5th fret with that pinky on the same string. You could also slide to that note with your middle finger and produce the same effect. I'm just choosing to hammer on instead. Okay, on the and beat, we're going to go back to the middle finger on the 3rd fret of that same string and pick it down. On 3, we'll go back to the 2nd fret on that same string with the 1st finger. We'll pick that down and let that ring out as a quarter note, just like we do in the second measure. And on 4, we're going to take the same quarter note rest that we did in the second measure. With the 4 count lead in, this is what that fourth measure is going to sound like. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, and 3, 4. Now let's try the first 4 measures one time with the 4 count lead in. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, and 3, and 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, and 3, and 1, and 3, 4. Let's run through the chorus one time. We'll begin by doing the 2 measure long bridge that leads into the chorus. We'll play the chorus, then we'll exit the chorus using the same 2 measure long bridge. And once we get out of the chorus, we're going to go back to the main rhythm and play it twice. I won't count this aloud as I play it. I'm just going to give you the 4 count lead in. 1, 2, 3, 4. The chorus will appear at 2 intervals in the song. The first will begin at 47 seconds into the song. The second will be the outro of the song at 3 minutes and 24 seconds. The guitar and bass parts in the chorus will also support the guitar solo at 2 minutes and 2 seconds. You will need a slide to play the rhythm guitar part on guitar 1. You also need the 1st and 3rd fingers free to play the root 5 power chords when the slide isn't being used. The best finger to place it on is the pinky. You'll need to place it directly over the fret pins to get the proper pitch. Otherwise, the chords produced by it will be either sharp or flat. Lastly, touch the strings lightly with it. Don't squeeze it against the fretboard. Guitar 1 is pretty much going to double what the bass guitar is doing during the choruses, note for note. We're going to start out by placing the slide on the 9th fret. We're going to be working off of the D, G, and B strings to play this rhythm. Anytime you use a slide on these 3 strings, or simply bar them with your finger, you're creating a major chord. In this case, it's an E major. Just like the bass guitar, we'll strum this chord down on 1 to start the first measure. We'll let it ring out as a dotted quarter note. On the and beat, after 2, we're going to strum it upwards. On 3, we're not going to pick again, we're simply going to slide to the 12th fret. Okay, that's a G major chord. On the beat, we're going to go back to the 9th fret and pick this up. On the and beat, to complete the first measure, we're going to go to the 5th fret and pick this chord down. Okay, that is a D major. Now to start the second measure, we're going to move to the 5th fret and pick those 3 strings down on 1. That's a C major. We're going to let them ring out as a half note. And on 3, we're going to shift to the 4th fret and play those 3 strings downwards on 1. Okay, that's a quarter note. With a 4-count lead in, this is what the first 2 measures are going to sound like. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3 up, and 1, 2, 3, 4. Measure 3 is going to be an exact repeat of what was done in measure 1. So we're going to skip ahead to measure 4. We're going to start out measure 4 just like the bass guitar by doing a series of tied triplets. On 1, we're going to play these 3 strings by picking them down. On the beat, we're going to slide up to the 7th fret. We're not picking this chord, we're just sliding up to it. The chord is sounded by the slide. To finish up that series of tied triplets, we're going to go back to the 5th fret and pick those 3 strings down. On 3, we're going to go to the 4th fret. We're going to pick those 3 strings down. Okay, now this is where the guitar, or at least this guitar part, will differ from the bass. On 4, the bass is at a quarter note of rest. On this guitar part, we're going to go to the 2nd fret and pick those 3 strings down and let them ring out as a quarter note. This is an A major chord. With a 4-count lead in, here's what the 3rd and 4th measures will sound like. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, and 3, and 1, and 3, 4. Guitar 1 is going to double the bass guitar note for note in a 2 measure long bridge that leads into the chorus and exit the chorus. The only thing that we're going to do differently is we're going to play power chords. We'll start out with the G5 power chord where the first finger is the root note on the low E string at the 3rd fret, and the 3rd finger is on the A string at the 5th fret. Instead of alternate picking these steady 8th notes, we're going to use all downstrokes. I'm going to take the side of my hand and rest it right on the strings where the saddle pieces meet the string, just deaden it a little and give it a chucking sound. It'll be counted 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Okay, that's the first measure. On the second measure, we're just going to bar the D and G strings at the 2nd fret and play an open A5 power chord with the same palm muting and 8th notes for the 2nd measure. With the 4-count lead in, this is what those 2 measures are going to sound like. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. And when we come out of the chorus, we're going to pick the open E string down on 1 and let that ring out for 4 measures. It'll actually kind of fade away on its own. Starting with the 2 measure long bridge, let's run through the entire chorus line on guitar 1 just one time. We're going to also exit the chorus with that 2 measure long bridge, and at the end of the bridge on 1, we're going to pick that open E string and let it ring out for 4 measures. I'm not going to count this aloud as I play it. I'm just going to give you the 4-count lead in. 1, 2, 3, 4. Guitar 2 is going to be a very lightly distorted guitar. It's so lightly distorted that it actually sounds clean on the record, so I'm just going to play it that way. We'll first look at the 2 measure long bridge. We're going to double the bass in guitar 1 note for note here. We're going to play this differently than guitar 1. We're going to add the octave to the G5 power chord by placing the pinky on the D string at the 5th fret. We're going to use the same 8th note timing. Instead of all downstrokes and palm mutes, we're going to use alternate picking and let this chord ring out openly. We're going to pick down on the downbeats and up on the end beats. For the second measure, we're going to play an A major chord. Okay, this is a standard A major that you're going to see in any chord chart. With the 4-count lead in, here's what the 2-measure long bridge is going to sound like. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Guitar 2 is going to follow the bass guitar note for note during the choruses. The primary difference is, on guitar 2, we're going to play major bar chords. The bass guitar is just going to play the root note of those chords. We're going to start out by placing the 3rd finger on the D, G, and B strings at the 9th fret. These are exactly the notes in the chord that we're playing with the slide on guitar 1. What we're going to do differently is bar it with our finger and add the root note of that chord. In this case, E. We're going to put the 1st finger on the A string at the 7th fret. What we're going to do is shift this chord pattern up and down the neck, just like we did on the slide guitar, on guitar 1. The only thing that we're going to do differently is at the end of measures 4 and 8, we're not going to go to this A major chord. What we're going to do is take a quarter note of rest with the bass. With the 4-count lead in, let's play the first 4 measures just one time. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, and 3, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, and 3, and 1, and 3, 4. Okay, and that repeats itself one time. Let's run through the part played on guitar 2 just one time. We'll start out by doing the 2-measure long bridge, then going into the chorus, then going back to the 2-measure long bridge, and after that we'll hit the open E string and let that sustain out and fade away for 4 measures. I won't count this aloud as I play it, I'll just give you the 4-count lead in. 1, 2, 3, 4.